3 weeks are in the books at the Donald Trump criminal trial in Manhattan. We've had 3 major witnesses testify thus far, a few other more minor witnesses, but I think they've presented some incredibly powerful evidence. The 3 major witnesses thus far, we had David Pecker, Keith Davidson, and then on Friday, Hope Hicks, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, who co-hosts Legal AF with us. She was in the courtroom at the trial on Friday. She described what she observed with the Hope Hicks testimony as a Perry Mason moment when Hope Hicks described this meeting she had with Donald Trump, where Trump acknowledged that Cohen had made the payment to Stormy Daniels. And then Hope Hicks talked about how she did not believe that Cohen would just ever make a payment like that out of the goodness of his heart. And then she started breaking down in tears right before cross-exam started. I want to break that down and all of the key witness testimony. I want to talk about all the key documentary evidence that has come in, the checks, the audio files, the bank accounts, the C-SPAN videos, and more. And then I want to talk about where are we going next, what happens next. And then, Popok, if we have some time, I think we should talk about how Trump Media's independent auditor, you know, the new Trump company that was formed through that reverse merger with the SPAC, the auditor was called B.F. Borgers. The actual accountant's name, or the so-called accountant's name, was Ben Borgers. That's their office right there. It looks like a restroom on one of those like rest stop exits off the highways, which was the first red flag when I read the first filing post-merger. I said, who's this auditor who signed off on it? Because I remembered that a bunch of the other auditors quit. So they needed somebody to sign off on Trump Media. And in the new SEC charges against B.F. Borgers, they refer to this company as an audit mill that would basically sign off on anything. And look, this is a repeated pattern that we've seen. And then, of course, when there was some reporting being done in the past few weeks about B.F. Borgers, Trump spokespeople all started saying, oh, this is a witch hunt. How dare they go after the auditor before they've even began work? And sure enough, the auditor has been engaged in some horrific conduct. We'll talk about that and more on Legal AF. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Michael Popok. Popok, thanks for letting me fill in midweek. It's always a pleasure to be able to do that. I know you've been running around. You've been posting some photos of where you've been at as well.
Thanks, Ben. I took my wife to District of Columbia to DC. She'd never been, and we're trying to find ways to do some quick vacations while my wife is pregnant with our first child. So I do appreciate you stepping in for me. We do it for each other. Very supportive network and group of colleagues here on Legal AF. I like the way we broke down, or going to break down the show today. Things we're going to talk about are important both as a listening and watching guide for things that have already happened, to put them in context and give our audience, who's just got a voracious appetite for all things at the intersection of law and politics, particularly the Trump trial going on right as we expected. I know there was a lot of news reporting out there that said, "Oh, are they just tired of all this? Does anybody care about the Trump trial?" And by our viewership and by the various shows and pre-game and post-game that you and Karen are doing, and the fill-in, the backfill that you and I and others are doing about the case, the answer to that is a resounding yes. Not only is our audience at rapt attention, but also the jury. And we have a lot of reporting, both from people like Karen, who are in the room, and others, about how this information that's being presented by the prosecutor. And by my count, we're about a third to a halfway through their script, which was outlined a year ago in their statement of facts that they presented as they had to as prosecutors to Donald Trump. And they're about halfway or maybe a little bit more through that. They've done a remarkable job. I think if you were to poll the prosecutors and ask them, knowing how there's always 2 cases, right? There's the one in your mind that is the best presentation you possibly can make. And then there's the one that actually happens in the courtroom. It's a pretty close correlation here. They got to be happy from the prosecution. Sure, there was some interesting moments that the press ran with about, some cross-examination of Keith Davidson, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, and for Karen McDougal that we'll talk about, trying to make him out to be a drive-by extortionist and all of that. And it was, and again, I almost called her Melania, sorry. Hope Hicks, the Melania lookalike, breaking down in tears at a certain moment for reasons that you and I will have fun speculating about on this podcast. But that's not the nuts and bolts. That's not the wood chopping that's going on in the courtroom in front of the jury. That's sort of, it's interesting, and we'll talk a lot about it. But what you and I are going to detail, and you've done in a hot take, the checks, the emails, the audio, the video, the secret recordings, all evidence that is evaluated by the jury, but all has equal weight in terms of its value, testimonial, evidentiary, recordings, audio, and all of that. And they are doing, I'll just leave it on this, Ben, the prosecutors are doing a masterful job in the presentation of their case in chief, because they're moving from inside witnesses to outside witnesses, inside, outside, as opposed to, just to make it clear for our audience, when you're a trial lawyer like you and me, Ben and Karen, you have to think about the organizing principles of your presentation. There has to be an internal logic to how you present your case to the jury. You can't just take, as I said on a hot take recently, you can't just take a giant box of a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle, and dump it out on the table and tell the jury, you figure it out during the course of the trial. You have to give them big pieces of whatever your puzzle is, linked together, and then attach it elegantly during the course of a trial. And what we've seen is every time there is an outside witness like David Pecker, it's matched with an inside witness like Rana Graff. We're going inside, we're going outside. Outside witness in Keith Davidson, lawyers for the two people part of the Catch and Kill program, the targets of the Catch and Kill program. Inside witness, Hope Hicks, as they make their way methodically through that script of the statement of facts that they gave us back in April, as they move into kind of the final moments when they're going to bring in some more boring inside witnesses like the accounts payable supervisor and the controller, who already almost went to jail once already, and then eventually Michael Cohen. And so that's what we're going to outline today. And then, of course, at the end, we'll talk about this long series of Trump accountants and auditors who either don't want anything to do with him and fire him, or get caught in their own fraud.
There is this harmony, this kind of orchestral, directorial aspect to being a prosecutor in presenting the evidence and how you start it. You almost think about like a concert, right? You don't want to bore your audience when you begin the concert with like the worst song or a new song, right? You always hate when you go and you see a band that you love and they start off and they're like, all right, I'm going to play you a new song off an album that you haven't heard yet. You may like that, but you don't want to hear that yet. You want to start off strong. And that was the point that you made, Popok, that you thought they were going to start off strong, right? So you go David Pecker, who tells the story. Then you start, to your point, you then have witnesses who then just show, here are the documents, here are text messages, here are business records, here are bank records. Then you go, here's Keith Davidson, another major player. Then you go, okay, here are more Trump texts, here are more Trump messages. And then you go Hope Hicks. And so it's been just from a professional perspective to watch this. It's just been very impressive to just
trial aficionados like you and I watching them.
Exactly. It's been great. So let's just start with the most recent witness, though. Hope Hicks. It's on everybody's mind, just as a way of background for everybody. The background of Hope Hicks: she was a teenage model. She started working for the Trump Organization shortly after she graduated from college. When Donald Trump decided to run for office, she kind of then became this like press secretary of the nascent kind of campaign. And then she became the press secretary when Trump ultimately won and disgraced the office. She was the communications director from 2017 to 2018. She stopped working there at 2018. Then she returned in 2020, 2021. She was there for the insurrection. She's testified before the January 6th committee, but she has not spoken with Donald Trump or people in Trump's orbit for several years, was one of the first things that she had talked about. She's represented by an independent counsel, not like a Trump appointed lawyer. And Karen Friedman Agnifilo, our co-host on Legal AF, was in the courtroom. And just a reminder, Karen worked in the district attorney's office for nearly 30 years. She was the number 2 at that office, and sometimes she served as the acting district attorney, like the top spot. So she was there. She observed it. And I just think it's so important, Popak, in our reporting, like when you go to the courthouse and you debunk Donald Trump saying that, like, oh, people can't go there and protest and that it's being blocked. I think it's so important that we have hosts like Karen Friedman Agnifilo, Harry Litman, and others who are actually in the courtroom telling us, so we're not just giving you like speculation. So this is what Karen Friedman Agnifilo said. She left the courtroom. She was going to her next meeting. And so when Karen explained what happened with Hope Hicks, she was quite literally in like a hallway. And as you know, KFA, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, has been reporting with us from like buses and trains and taxi cabs because she wants to get us the information first. So she leaves the courtroom, and this is exactly what she told us about the Hope Hicks testimony. Let's play this clip.
The prosecution started asking her about this payment that was made, and I'm trying to think of exactly what it was because it was so powerful. She basically said that later on, after he was already president, they had a conversation about the payment to Stormy Daniels, and what he said to her was, "It's a good thing the story didn't come out before the election." And as she was saying it, it felt like a Perry Mason moment, because she very much was saying, she very much was confirming what the prosecution theory was that the whole reason they suppressed that was because of the election. And at that moment, she started to cry, and her voice cracked. And then the defense attorney, Emil Bove, got up and asked her a question like, confirm what your job is, or something like that. And then she broke down crying. And you know, as a defense attorney, you know, she just basically gave the prosecution what they needed. They tied the primary reason that Donald Trump wanted this story not to come out before was because of the election. And I think the gravity of what she had just provided to the prosecution, she broke down crying.
So Michael Popak, you heard Karen Friedman Agnifilo describe what she observed with Hope Hicks. Of course, we've gotten reporting not just from KFA, but numerous others who are in the courthouse who we work with, and just other great reporters who work for other outlets. So we've gotten a wide array of perspectives here to synthesize. Popak, what do you make of Hope Hicks' testimony on Friday?
I like the way you started it, Ben, by describing who Hope Hicks is. She was very candid. I did a hot take on Hope Hicks. I said she's going to be devastating for Donald Trump. She's going to destroy the Melania defense, which we'll talk about in detail here, which seems to be based on the opening statement made by the incredible shrinking Todd Blanche, who I haven't seen in the courtroom do anything substantively other than gag orders and the opening. He's turned it over to his colleague who works under him, Emil Bove, who's been doing the cross-examination of all the major witnesses. I'm actually quite surprised by that. Indicates perhaps that Blanche, I mean, I'm the lead trial lawyer in my cases, and yes, I have colleagues that have handled cases with me, but like the main witnesses of Hope Hicks and Keith Davidson, turn it over to my junior colleague. I doubt I would do that. I'm wondering what that signals. But back to Hope Hicks. Hope Hicks is a self-confessed to be inappropriate inexperience for the jobs that she held. She told, in her testimony, she told the jury that she was shocked when Donald Trump offered a 28-year-old no press secretary experience, Hope Hicks, the job of press secretary for his campaign. She said she thought he was kidding. She laughed. He said no, and then eventually she was offered the job. Hope Hicks is one in a series of Melania lookalikes that are in Trump's orbit. Here's a picture of them. Margot Martin is the new Hope Hicks. She's in the courtroom. She's 28 now. She's a deputy communications director for Donald Trump. She's on the left. Melania there. Then you've got Hope Hicks. That's Kristi Noem, but I would put the fourth one in as Alina Habba. If you line all these people up, you'd think they were trying out for Fox News, but they're not. They're all have leadership or communication roles for Donald Trump. She also testified in, which I think completely destroys the Melania defense, which is, I didn't do it because I was trying to interfere with the election. I was just trying to protect Melania. Well, it's a number of flies in the ointment on that. First of all, where is Melania? A powerful moment as a defense lawyer, if I were handling the case, which of course I never would, neither would Ben, neither would Karen, would be to have Melania in the courtroom during Hope Hicks's testimony. You want to see waterworks for Hope Hicks? Bring in Melania and have her sit behind Donald Trump in the gallery. That didn't happen because this story doesn't make any sense. And the jury are human beings. And to believe the story that he was doing this to protect Donald Trump, then what is to make of what Hope Hicks said, which is she did not believe Donald Trump on a key point. She said that Donald Trump told her, isn't it great that Michael Cohen on his own selflessly gave Stormy Daniels $130,000 to try to act like he wasn't involved with them as the mastermind of the orchestrated conspiracy between David Pecker, Michael Cohen, Alan Weisselberg, and with Donald Trump at the center to pay off women like Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal and others who had negative stories that would interfere with his election results as we moved into October and November of 2016. That is the story, okay? And that is the facts on the statement of facts that the prosecutors are methodically making their way through, witness by witness, document by document. This Melania story is blown apart both by Hope Hicks' testimony that when Donald Trump said, oh yeah, it was a great Michael Cohen just selflessly made a payment. She says, I didn't believe that. I didn't believe, under cross-examination, I didn't believe that. Why not? Because I never saw Michael Cohen as doing anything selflessly or with charity. He's a person that try to take credit for everything. I did not believe Donald Trump. So what do you have? You have the jury hearing that Hope Hicks, who comes off very credible with her crying and all the rest of it and her demeanor, that she thinks Donald Trump's a liar on a key point in this case. The other thing the jury's already heard before Hope Hicks even gets there. Remember, somebody like Hope Hicks is a moment in time, but she follows a sequence of other events that have already happened that the jury has already heard. And if they don't remember, they will be reminded of come closing and other witnesses as we move through this case. They've already heard that Donald Trump wanted Michael Cohen to delay the payment to Stormy Daniels to see if he could avoid paying it outright and get elected without and keep her story off the front page of having sex with Donald Trump outside the marriage while Melania was pregnant with one of her children, Barron. If he could get elected without having to pay her, that would be fine with him. Well, what happened to the Melania defense? I mean, how does Melania get less hurt or less embarrassed if he's president? So that is below. They've already heard that. Now they've heard from Hope Hicks, this reluctant witness that who Trump apparently did, according to courtroom reporters, including I guess Karen, never looked at her, kept his eyes shut during the whole thing as she testified. Did she give a couple of little little kernels to the defense on the Melania defense? If the jury even bought it, which they won't, maybe said, well, he cared about Melania. All right, so a husband cares about a wife. He valued her opinion. Okay, same thing. He was in control of his own PR. Well, that makes sense. He's in control of his own defense strategy, pushing and shoving his lawyers to do his bidding. I mean, the jury hasn't heard one new bit of evidence in favor of the defense, my position, from Hope Hicks. And yet on the very moment when she knew she was crushing Donald Trump's hopes and dreams of a defense, she burst into tears. And believe me, not only our KFA in the back stairwell of that dingy courthouse that she used to work in noticed that, but the prosecutors noticed that, and they are going to remind the jury of that in their closing when they get down to the closing argument. Last thing on Hope Hicks, who is basically done. And you made a good point about her not being, hasn't spoken to Trump in 2 years, didn't take any new jobs with him. She doesn't really have to any longer. The reporting is that she's about to marry the number 2 guy at Goldman Sachs, the major investment firm, financial services firm in New York, who may at this moment have more money than Donald Trump. So she doesn't really have to kowtow to the Trump orbit and in her testimony. And I think, as we expected, that she was going to be, I think the jury will find her very effective as a truth teller. And the few things that Emil, the lawyer for Donald Trump, was able to get out that they'll try to spin together as some sort of Melania defense will fall under the weight of the mountain of additional evidence and testimony that will be adduced during this trial by the prosecution.
Andrew Weissman, who was in the courtroom as well and who's been reporting on some of these developments, says the following: "This is why Hope Hicks is such a devastating witness against Donald Trump. Hicks makes clear that Trump knew of the Cohen payoff scheme to Stormy Daniels. 2, even if you believe his statement to her that he only learned after the fact. 3, her testimony sinks Trump's defense, since he is on record in a civil case admitting that he reimbursed Cohen the $130,000. And 4, Hicks establishes that Trump knew that the money was for Daniels' silence, not for the claimed legal fees for ongoing legal work by Cohen." I think of all of those, number 4 is the most important part right there, that Trump was aware that this was hush money payments for silencing her. If Trump's going to try to argue that the payments that he made and his signature is on to Michael Cohen are for other things, it's going to be clear that he specifically knew that Cohen had paid off Stormy Daniels.
You know what proves that point, Ben, before you move on? The fact that they gave Michael Cohen what's called a true-up payment and paid him $400,000 for a $130,000 payment. Let me just explain it quickly. If it were just a payment to Michael Cohen for his income, okay, then they would just pay him for his legal services, the $130,000 for whatever those legal services were, on the fact that 2 days earlier he set up a new sham company, went to his bank and took out a loan, and then turned the money over to the lawyers for Stormy Daniels. So that's a lot of things that the jury's going to have to disbelieve in order to believe Donald Trump. But then if it's just $130,000, let's take Trump at his word for once. It was a $130,000 payment for legal expenses. I don't know how he paid his taxes. Then why is it for $400,000? And why is it include what Michael Cohen will ultimately testify as a true-up payment? Meaning he'd have to record that on some tax return for this company that he set up or for himself as income. It's phantom income or income to him, meaning he'd have to pay taxes on it. He didn't want to pay taxes on it. Trump didn't want him to pay taxes on it. So he got a payment so that when he, and I'm sure Michael will testify, though, when he put this, recorded it on his tax returns as quote unquote income, he had the money from Trump to pay the taxes. You don't do that when I'm a lawyer. I get a payment from a client. The client pays me. He doesn't pay me and then pay my taxes on the payment. And so that whole thing, that whole structure of the true-up payment and paying Michael Cohen $400,000 to cover the tracks of a $130,000 payment in order so he didn't get screwed at tax time, what does that say? That says Michael Cohen is the conduit for Donald Trump and Donald, not the other way around. This other theory of the defense, the rogue Michael Cohen theory, is also going out the window through Hope Hicks. That Michael Cohen on his own to kind of bully his way into the campaign, into Trump's good graces, just decided he would kill the deal. We know that's not true because Pecker testified that the only reason he didn't make the payment directly to Stormy Daniels is because he got screwed by Trump on the payment to Karen McDougal for $150,000. And he's like, I'm out. I'm not spending more of my employer's money on buying another story for Donald Trump and not getting reimbursed. Hence Michael Cohen. What's the common denominator for this episode so far? The jury is watching and listening. And you can't pull wool over their eyes, and the prosecutors won't let the defense.
And I think this is the simplest argument to make to the jury too. if Michael Cohen went rogue and did things that he wasn't supposed to do at all, that weren't in a retainer, that Cohen went rogue, assume that's the argument, then why did Donald Trump pay him?
Right.
And then why would Donald Trump pay him extra?
Right. Rogue payments. Rogue
You
premium.
are so rogue. You are acting so out of authority that I'm giving you a bonus.
You're
I am going to give you triple the money because you are a rogue, awful person.
That's
Come
so
on,
good.
that's the most obvious explanation. But there's more too. There's lots of video of Donald Trump praising Michael Cohen in real time. Then let's talk about that and more. I also want to talk about this civil lawsuit where some stipulations were made by Trump's legal team back in 2018 or so and confirmed by a judge in 2020 in a Stormy Daniels v. Donald Trump civil case right out here in Los Angeles that I think is going to have major ramifications. And you and I will start talking about some of the documentary evidence as well. We'll talk about that and more. Let's take our first quick break.
If you thought houseplants were just for decoration, think again. NeoPX from NeoPlants brings science and nature together to create a living, air-purifying powerhouse for your home. NeoPX is the world's first plant microbiome system, bioengineered to purify the air in your home. Indoor air can be up to 5 times more polluted than outdoors, mainly due to harmful pollutants called VOCs. Volatile organic compounds that are constantly emitted indoors from thousands of common household products like furniture, paint, cosmetics, and more. NeoPX was invented by PhD scientists to target 3 of the most harmful VOCs found in your home, and is up to 30 times better than a regular houseplant at fighting indoor air pollution. It's based on 5 years of research and development to enable NeoPX to capture and recycle VOCs into useful matter like sugar and amino acids. Every month, you just pour the bioengineered formula called Power Drops onto the plant soil to supercharge NeoPX's air pollution capacity. NeoPX comes with a self-watering planter called the Shell, so you only have to water it every 2 to 3 weeks. My existing air purifiers at home make up a fair amount of my electricity bill. But with NeoPX, I can get clean air with just some sun and water, and it looks great in my home. When you purchase NeoPX, you'll receive 6 Power Drop sachets. But to celebrate the launch on this podcast, NeoPlants is offering a 7th sachet free of charge. That's 1 extra month of pure air. Go to neoplants.com/legalaf, and the code will be applied automatically at checkout. Drop shipping available within the U.S. and soon to many more countries. With a growing family, I've been trying to save even more money, but it seemed like my bank account was stuck. Thankfully, I heard about Rocket Money and gave it a try. It turns out I had a number of subscriptions I was paying for it that I'd forgotten about. Rocket Money helped me cancel some of them, and now I have more money than before. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. I can see all of my subscriptions in one place, and if I see something I don't want, Rocket Money can help me cancel it with a few taps. I love how the dashboard shows me this month's spending compared to last month, so I can clearly see my spending habits. Plus, they'll help me create a custom budget and keep my spending on track. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. All you have to do is submit a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. They'll deal with customer service for you. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. With Rocket Money, I have full control over my subscriptions and a clear view of my expenses. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/legalaf. That's rocketmoney.com/legalaf. rocketmoney.com/legalaf.
Michael Popak, I went so rogue during the break that you still want to co-host the show with me. Pesky rogue Ben decided, and you said, "Hey, I still want to do the show with you." I mean,
no, better. I'm giving you a bonus.
You're giving me a bonus. I mean, it's points like that, though, where we shouldn't, lose the overall forest for the trees here. We need to sometimes take a step back and say, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And the defenses are so foolish when you actually kind of talk about it like that. And so I think it's important that we frame it that way. And the prosecution, of course, they're so in the weeds sometimes. It's important that they take a step back and go, look, for the jury, sometimes it's as simple points like that that will be kind of most effective here. I want to talk about this lawsuit very briefly. The Stephanie Clifford, who goes by the name Stormy Daniels, when she does what she does, versus Donald Trump. Here's a court order that court can take judicial notice of. These were stipulations that were made by Trump in this civil lawsuit that I think are going to be pretty damaging to Donald Trump. As the court says, plaintiff has also submitted defendant, referring to Trump, and Essential Consulting, that's when Trump and Cohen were working together, a joint opposition that they filed back on June 1, 2018 in the district court, in which defendant, Trump, and Cohen admit and confirm that defendant reimbursed EC, which was Cohen's shell company, $130,000 payment to plaintiff pursuant to the terms of the agreement. Thus, in their June 1st, 2018 opposition brief in this action, EC, Essential Consulting, which is Cohen, and defendant Trump admitted that defendant reimbursed Cohen $130,000 to plaintiff, which was paid in consideration for plaintiff's promises not to disclose information pertaining to David Dennison. And why they were stipulating to that in 2018 is they wanted to try to keep Stormy Daniels, you might be saying, like, why would they even stipulate to this? They wanted to keep her subject to the confidentiality and non-disclosure order, right? So they wanted it to apply to David Dennison. At that point, they wanted Trump to be David Dennison so that Stormy Daniels would be bound by the agreement and that she could be sued for going public with it. So you have documents like that that the jury's going to see. They have not seen that one yet. They have not seen the checks yet, but here's a check that's signed by Donald Trump, being Donald Trump paying Michael Cohen right there. That's Donald Trump's signature. There are 11 total checks. I think 8 of them or so have Donald Trump's signature on them. The other ones have other people at the Trump organization. So the jury's going to actually then see that Trump paid Cohen after all of this. And my point earlier, well, if you claim that Cohen was rogue, why would you then pay him that? What the jury has seen, though, already through a C-SPAN archivist who had to fly in and testify because Trump wouldn't stipulate, was Donald Trump praising Michael Cohen after Trump was elected, after Cohen made the payments to Stormy Daniels, after Donald Trump is on an audio recording acknowledging to Michael Cohen that he's aware of Cohen setting up all of these shell companies and accounts. This is what Donald Trump had to say about Cohen in real time after Trump was aware that Cohen was making the payments to Stormy Daniels. Here, play this clip.
And by the way, we just found out I was coming down. Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen is a very talented lawyer. He's a good lawyer in my firm.
Let's just play that even one more time, just so you can hear it. This is what Trump has to say about Michael Cohen after he's aware that Cohen made those.
I missed the rogue comment. Let's hear it again.
And by the way, we just found out I was coming down. Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen is a very talented lawyer. He's a good lawyer in my firm.
That was what he was saying in real time. Let me show you some other things that the jury has seen already, too. The jury's seen messages like this one. Polls close. This is from October 16, 2016. Donald Trump wrote, polls close, but can you believe I lost large numbers of women voters based on made-up events that never happened? Media rigging election. The jury saw October 11th, 2016. The very foul-mouthed John McCain begged for my support during his primary. I gave, he won, then dropped me over locker room remarks. The jury saw this statement. Can't believe these totally phony stories. 100% made up by women, many already proven false and pushed big time by press, have impact. The jury's seen this post by Donald Trump more recently. I did nothing wrong in the horse face case. Never had an affair with her. Just another false acquisition by a sleazebag. Witch hunt. The jury's seen the bank account statements from First Republic Bank with Cohen opening up the bank account. The jury's seen
Can you
Donald.
go back, Ben? Ben, go back to that last one.
Which one? The bank
Look at
statement?
the Freudian typo. Never had an affair with her. Just another false acquisition by a sleazebag. He meant accusation. What he really did is he bought her silence, so it was acquisition. Sometimes, and we know now from Hope Hicks, right? Only he and Dan Scavino ran his media and did tweeting. So that's his. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
And then this is what Donald Trump was saying while he was campaigning in June of 2016. The jury saw this as well through the C-SPAN archivist who testified. Play this clip.
As you have seen, they're 100% made up. They never happened. They never would happen. I don't think that happened with very many people, but they certainly aren't going to happen with me.
So I wanted to show the evidence as well. Testimony is evidence, but I also wanted to show the evidence there, the documents, the text mess, the tweets. The jury has seen a lot of text messages in real time from David Pecker and Howard Dillon, who run the National Enquirer. But the jury saw those videos. How powerful do you think that is? Let's talk about with the other witnesses who have testified. Then the jury sees that. Take it away, Pope.
Thanks, Ben. I've said in the past, and on with you and me, and in hot takes, that while technically all evidence is sort of created equally, juries weigh it. Juries weigh witness credibility, but there is no, in the law, there is no difference between a piece of documentary evidence, inferential evidence, hearsay that's properly admitted evidence, testimonial evidence, audio, video. It all has the same potential weight depending upon how it's ultimately weighed by the juror. But one is not better than the other. The law doesn't say, well, if you have an audio clip, well, that's it. Well, do you have a video? The video is better. It's not like there's a priority. Video is better than audio. Audio is better than documents. Documents are better than witnesses. Circumstantial evidence it's not like that. Everything has given equal merit under the law, subject to weighing by the jury as the trier of fact. However, having said that, the reality for trial lawyers like you and me and jurors like this is that certain evidence does blow their mind more and change the weather in the room more when played, as we talked about at the very beginning, in the right sequence at the right time with momentum, internal logic by a masterful presentation by the prosecutors or of defendants if we're talking about the defendants. And when you play a clip and then you put on evidence to show that clip is a lie, and by this time, frankly, the jury knows going in that Donald Trump lied to the American people about his extramarital sexual activity. They already know about the Access Hollywood tape. They knew about it before they even got into the jury box, but they certainly know about it now. They know about the hot mic moment, about attacking women. They know going in, even though they can be fair and impartial, that Donald Trump's already been adjudged by another jury twice of being a rapist and a defamer and a punitive damage award ower in the E. Jean Carroll matter. They know already that he paid off these people because it's not that big of a leap because he did it and he didn't want it to see the light of day. Hope Hicks gave credence to that Donald Trump cared about what the voters thought about him when it came to these things. And we have the audio tapes that have already started to be played
including Michael Cohen's, and that has a powerful impact. When you hear the participants in the conspiracy talking about the establishment of a phony shell company, that the payments have to be made with Donald Trump participating in the call and directing the call, that have to be made not in cash, but in a way that there's a paper trail, and talking about how much are we paying this time and where is it coming from? Donald Trump following up with David Pecker, the publisher of the National Enquirer, about how's our girl Karen McDougal, who he paid off. Oh, she's being quiet. What do we do about Karen? After Karen, and Hope Hicks testified about this, after Karen McDougal, decided to go on Anderson Cooper, and we should pay her more money. How do we get her to stop talking? And the conversations that she had in damage control, Hope Hicks around that, they've heard all of this. But I'm telling you, when they dim the lights like we used to do, and they roll the tape of CNN, and then all of these disparate pieces, and then quickly the prosecutors put these puzzle pieces together for the jury, right, in big pieces as they knit this whole story together, it's just supremely powerful. And to my point, I want to just bring it up here again. They're following a script. I talk about it in a hot take. But in particular, a year ago, the prosecutors, as they're required to do, filed a statement of facts along with the indictment. And we are now, by my count, we're moving through the first two Roman numerals and all those paragraphs with the witnesses we identified in the first segment: Pecker, Rona Graff, Keith Davison, the guy over at First Republic Bank, Hope Hicks. And now we're moving quickly and rapidly. If people want to know where we are in this 4, 5, or 6 week trial, by my count, we're now into the section labeled under the statement of facts, Roman numeral 2, the defendant's falsified business records, and we've already made substantial progress there. I know 2 witnesses that they're definitely going to be bringing in because they mention them. The Trump Organization controller, Jeff McConney, who just avoided jail time the first time around and has left the company. He's going to testify. And whoever the Trump Organization accounts payable supervisor, this is going to be fascinating testimony, but important testimony to prove the case. That person's coming in. Remember, or to remind our audience, you know who knows the Trump Organization and the individual people's responsibilities for things like record keeping better than even Donald Trump? The Manhattan prosecutors, the DA's office, because they already tried a case 2 years ago as a dress rehearsal, getting a 17-count felony conviction against 2 of Donald Trump's major companies for falsification of business records and tax fraud. They know who these people are and what they're going to say. And they've already interviewed them to prepare them for their testimony. They've interviewed all of these people before of their testimony. To anybody that thinks that they didn't talk to Hope Hicks through her counsel before she takes the stand, David Pecker before he took the stand, Michael Cohen before he takes the stand, that the prosecutors aren't ready, I wonder what this witness is going to say. That's not how this works. They know exactly what these people are going to say, or they wouldn't put them on the stand. And just one last point on this, the confidence, and that's another shout out to the prosecutors, the confidence that the prosecutors have shown by cutting Alan Weisselberg loose and telling him, no, you're all right, 2-time convicted felon related to false statements, you stay at Rikers Island. Even though you were the chief financial officer that worked on the bookkeeping and worked on how to get Michael Cohen paid, well, went through you. We don't need you. We have enough. That showed me so much confidence in their case. If I was the defense, I'd be like, crap, they don't even want Weisselberg. He's staying in jail for this. We're cooked, which explains, just back to my original point, the 20-minute opening by Todd Blanche. Let me ask you something, Ben. Where do you think Todd Blanche is? Why is he not doing these key witnesses? And we haven't really seen him except for the gag order arguments and at the opening statement time.
I think when there was the initial contempt hearing and the judge said, you're losing all credibility before me, and Todd Blanche was caught flat-footed, right. He looked weak. He didn't have good answers. It was a very, very just overall weak presentation. I think that, Trump basically tapped Emil Bove, the other lawyer, who, by the way, I'm told, is a very good lawyer, used to be a federal prosecutor with a very good reputation. And so I think they turned it over to Emil Boeb. Interestingly, Donald Trump has Todd Blanche just kind of at his side during those bizarre press conferences. And in a moment, I want to chat with you about one of those where Todd Blanche has really been, is neutered the right word to use?
Yes.
He's lost all credibility, not just in the courtroom, but amongst other lawyers too. So any reputation that Todd Blanche was a good lawyer, he's destroyed his reputation. I hope he's enjoying whatever checks that Donald Trump's political action committee is paying him, because he's a joke right now. Lawyers that I talked to who once respected him, laugh at this guy behind his back. His reputation is in tatters. And just think about it. You have Donald Trump at this press conference claiming that the gag order prevents him from testifying at trial, despite Donald Trump saying that he was going to testify at trial. Then he turns to Todd Blanche, looks at Todd Blanche and says, "That's right? The gag order prevents me." And then Todd Blanche shakes his head, yes, that's accurate. And everybody knows that's just false. And so Todd Blanche became no better than Alina Habba, almost the same way that Chris Kise became no better than Alina Habba when they tried the case. Trump makes people worse. He surrounds himself with already bad people. But if you are competent, you have to be. He makes you worse. You have to just listen to whatever he says. You can't have any modicum of independence, but that's what I think happened. That's what I think happened there, Pope.
I think you're totally right. I think you're totally right about that. I mean, we said early on, but that's the good thing about Legal AF. We the continuity of our follow through. And you and I can talk about things we talked about 3 months, 6 months, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, with recall. We said with him and Chris Kise, there was a reason that their big American lawyer 200 law firms kicked them out, or they left those firms, set up their own shops by themselves as a captive law firm for one client. That's what happened. Both Chris Kise and Todd Blanche left their law firms, set up their own separate shops of 2 and 3 persons total to represent one client and make millions of dollars. Chris Kise has gotten $5.5 million. Alina Habba's gotten $5.5 to $10 million. Todd Blanche has gotten $5.5 to $10 million for these couple of guys that are running around here, doing whatever they're trying to do here. And the rumor is, in the reporting, that Blanche wants to be like Attorney General or White House counsel if, God forbid, there's the restoration of the Trump presidency. We have to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen politically and legally. But that's why he's sacrificing his professional reputation on the altar of Donald Trump's greed and lust for power.
I always tell my law students at USC, I teach law school and I teach undergrad at USC Law at the Gould School. And I always tell them, I'm like, look, if you want to be very wealthy and make huge amounts of money, do not go into law for that reason. Go into law because you love the practice of law and you want to do right and you care about law and order, and then perhaps the money will come. I mean, all these shows like Suits and others that even, show lawyers being incredibly wealthy and having mega mansions. I mean, there's a very small portion of lawyers that kind of do that money at the highest of high levels, but that's actually not most lawyers. That's not to say that lawyers don't do well, but what you see here is how easily enticed someone like a Blanche is. And the point I want to make is doing it for money because Trump's political action committee is paying them more than they've ever seen in their life. And these are people who in their careers, for whatever reason, Alina Habba feeling that her career, never having a real career to begin with and doing like parking garage law near Bedminster, someone like a Chris Kise who just wants to be wildly wealthy, someone like a Todd Blanche, wants to be wildly wealthy, leaving their firms, which pay them good money, but not mega wealth, but sacrificing their reputation and their career for these $1 million checks that are paid for not by Donald Trump, but by Mr. and Mrs. Magadonia, people who are out there complaining about all of the things that Donald Trump tries to gin up about the economy, but are so willing to give Donald Trump their life savings so that a purported billionaire can go and pay Todd Blanche all of this money. Popok, let's talk a little bit more about that. I want to talk about where this trial is going. A lot still to discuss, but let's take our last ad break of the show.
Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then, Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. And you can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. It can also track your cycle and, for women, the onset of menopause, and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts, so you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. The key to metabolic health is something called metabolic flexibility, and that's where Lumen really shines. It refers to your body's ability to efficiently switch between using different fuel sources like carbs and fats. There are preferred times to use each, and how well you can switch places you on the metabolic flexibility spectrum. And after getting to know you through your breath, Lumen gives you a metabolic flex score that you can track and improve upon. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me and use LegalAF to get $100 off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.ME and use LegalAF at checkout for $100 off. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Look at my recording studio. You don't think I worry about window treatments? You don't think I care about privacy? Look at the windows behind me. I need window treatments. And now finally, there's a better way to buy blinds and window treatments. It's called 3-Day Blinds. They're the leading manufacturer of custom window treatments in the US. And right now they're running a buy one, get one 50% off deal. We can shop for almost anything at home. Why not shop for blinds at home too? 3-Day Blinds has local, professionally trained design consultants who have an average of 10 years or more of experience that provide expert guidance on the right blinds for you in the comfort of your home. Just set up an appointment and you'll get a free, no obligation quote the same day. Not very handy? I'm not. The expert team at 3-Day Blinds handles all the heavy lifting. They design, measure, and install, so you can sit back, relax, and leave it to the pros. There's a better way to buy blinds and window treatments. It's called 3-Day Blinds. They're the leading manufacturer of custom window treatments in the U.S. 3-Day Blinds has been in business for 45 years, and you may not hear it in the name, but they make an incredibly high-quality product. That's why they are the highest rated blinds company on Trustpilot at 4.7 out of 5 stars. No matter your unique need, from motorization to home automation to room darkening or child safety, with 3-Day Blinds, you choose from thousands of options that fit any budget or style. And with actual samples, you won't be guessing about what your blinds will look like. Right now, you can get 3-Day Blinds, buy one, get one 50% off deal on custom blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery. For a free, no charge, no obligation consultation, just head to 3dayblinds.com/legalaf. That's buy one, get one 50% off when you head to 3dayblinds.com /legalaf. One last time. That's the number 3, DAY, blinds.com /legalaf.
Thank you to our pro-democracy sponsors. The discount codes are in the description below. It's really helpful to continue to grow this network. We're grateful for the support of those pro-democracy sponsors. Also, one of the ways we grow this show and grow the network is through our Patreon, patreon.com/legalaf. We have 2 new videos that I gave. And now that my USC lectures are done for this semester, I'm up and running giving lectures on Patreon. Popok, you're giving a ton of lectures on Patreon. So if people wanted to kind of just dig deeper into these topics and really geek out with us on the law and just see what it would be like to be in a law school class with Michael Popok or myself, that's the place to do it. Patreon.com/legalaf. Popok, during the ad break, I couldn't help but reflect as I was talking about lawyers and responding to your question, just seeing the dynamic of all different lawyers aiding and abetting certain types of conduct on full display in this criminal trial. I mean, you have Michael Cohen, who's going to be testifying soon, who's now a disbarred lawyer who got disbarred essentially for doing work for Donald Trump that he shouldn't have done. And Cohen right now quite literally has a podcast called Mea Culpa. And Cohen's been saying, I screwed up. I made mistakes. I'm warning you, don't make the mistakes that I made. Hey, I'm just giving you the red flag. This didn't have to happen to me. I screwed up, which I appreciate. People deserve second chances, and that's what Cohen's doing. Then you have in the courtroom, though, people like Todd Blanche. Outside in the courtroom, you got people like Alina Habba, who are next iterations, if you will, of what we've seen before with Trump lawyers. Then in the courtroom also, you have the testimony of people like Keith Davidson, who's a lawyer, but he was doing these kind of strange settlement deals where it's not really clear what the claim was, but they were treating them like legal settlements for hush money payments that were being done, like Davidson and Cohen and National Enquirer. So I just kept on thinking about the role of attorneys, the role of lawyers, and then you have the prosecution standing up for law and order, and Trump attacking the prosecutors and attacking the judicial system. I don't know. I wanted to reflect on that.
You're totally right. And there's going to be more lawyers in this case that are going to be testifying. It's not just going to be the strange situation of Keith Davidson, who a lot of commentators misinterpreted his demeanor. They were like, he seems uncomfortable talking about some of the deals he did for Tina Tequila and this one and that one. Yeah, he seemed to be the go-to lawyer when people had sex or some sort of interaction with a celebrity, and then they were going to go public with it, which they're allowed to do. They want to write a book, they want to go National Enquirer, social media, YouTube, they can. And then he would just, as a public service, offer to not go public if they were willing to get paid another way. I mean, these people were going to get paid one way or the other. Stormy Daniels was either going to write a book or go on a circuit tour or whatever she was going to do. And if Donald Trump didn't want that to happen and wanted to give her money another way, he'd have to pay for it. That's not the crime. The crime, and that the prosecutors are continuing to remind the jury, the crime is the cover-up of on the business record fraud, right? Because if you have nothing to hide, then Donald Trump just goes deep into his pocket and he pays off Stormy Daniels, and we have no trial to talk about. But the way through a Rube Goldberg contraption, he paid all of this. It's the cover-up and the crime. And then, of course, Michael Cohen. But to your point, not the only lawyer that's going to testify about, he's got clients, so he's got to pick his way through the attorney-client privilege. I thought his answers were he was more pensive and reticent and more just the facts, because he was worried about his attorney-client relationships and privilege and ethical issues. And that's what we were watching him, not that he was squirming and having to answer those questions. And who cares if that's how he made a living? They try to make that day that Keith Davidson is an extortionist day. Who cares? This is not a case about state versus Keith Davidson. This is a case about Donald Trump willingly participating in this scheme in order to prevent himself from not getting elected or not losing the election. We know there's at least 2 more witnesses coming up, because back to my handy trusty statement of facts, by the prosecutor. Remember, every paragraph in this statement that they made a year ago and filed with the court and gave to Trump, they know they can prove multiple ways, or they would not have written it at all. I mean, they wrote exactly what they can prove and no more. They got at least 2 more lawyers. They got one, mainly involved with Donald Trump trying to make back channel messaging to Michael Cohen to stay quiet and take one for the team in going to prison, which Michael ultimately got convicted of doing. So there's 2 more lawyers, a lawyer C and a lawyer D, that are going to end up having to testify too on paragraphs 38 and 39 back in the mid-April of 2018 period. We haven't even gotten that part of the trial, but we will, and we'll see more lawyers that did not cover themselves in any glory in doing Donald Trump's bidding, and or, as we've said before, skirted with disaster, see Rudy Giuliani, and all the other lawyers indicted or convicted in the various states, along with Donald Trump, who worked for Donald Trump at one time.
Popok, let's look ahead now, in addition to those lawyer witnesses, to what else we expect to happen in this upcoming week. How long do we expect this trial to last? It does seem to be moving rather quickly. Justice Merchan has a firm grip on the courtroom, really has an iron fist on, he has not yet fully dropped the hammer to incarcerate Donald Trump yet. But there's been already the contempt finding that was made regarding 9 separate gag order violations. Earlier this week, there were 4 additional gag order violations that were brought before Justice Merchan in a second contempt hearing. Merchan's yet to rule there. We expect him to rule soon as well. The Midas Touch Network and our editorial team has identified more gag order violations of Donald Trump. On Thursday night, he posted a video from a social media app called Rumble from the Steve Bannon Show. It was Andrew Giuliani and some other right-wing hosts who were attacking the judge's daughter. And at the very beginning of the video, you hear them attack the judge's daughter and then attack the judge's gag order that's in place. And so it clearly seems intentional and willful right there. I'm looking to see if on Monday we're going to see the prosecution bring up those violations. But look, the case has been progressing rather quickly. It's possible we're going to have a verdict in the next 4 to 6 weeks. I want to get your take on that.
Yeah.
When do you think Cohen's going to testify? But let me just read this to you from George Conway, what he had to say about Michael Cohen. He said that all of the testimony he's heard in court, Conway's been in court so far, corroborates everything that Cohen has said about the case. And every bit of testimony that has come out shows Cohen has come clean and is telling the truth about that. Now they're going to go after him and say, well, you submitted this form to the taxi commission. You said this to this judge. They're going to go through all sorts of stuff. And it's like, so what? Tell me, what is it that Michael Cohen is lying about on the witness stand as it relates to this case? And they've got nothing, because he's been corroborated by Pecker. He's been corroborated by his banker. He's been corroborated by text messages. He's been corroborated by the tapes he recorded of Donald Trump. He's been corroborated by Hope Hicks. So talk about Cohen, talk about other witnesses, the length of this trial. What do you make of all of that, Popok?
If I'm going to use where the prosecutors think they need to be in terms of their statement of facts from a year ago, and the pace at which, the velocity at which they've been able to make the first half of their case, first 2 Roman numerals, if you will, now turning to business record fraud, more of that, some backfill on the other points with other witnesses that we know are coming, and then some new issues that have not yet been presented to the jury, but we know are coming because they're in that statement of facts about Michael Cohen and the attempt to silence Michael Cohen or have him take one for the team for Donald Trump that Donald Trump was also involved with. Right, because you're not doing anything wrong. You want to make sure that Michael Cohen, who you are now claiming went rogue, takes one for the team by lying about your involvement, and have people, lawyers, approach Michael Cohen in order to silence him and or alter his testimony. That's what you do. And that's what they're going to want the jury to believe is consistent. So based on the way they're going at the 11th day mark now, knowing that it's been about about 3.5 trial days a week, because there's been a couple of extra dark days in there to accommodate some jury issues and some court issues. I think we're going to see another 3 weeks if they can hang in their pace at 4 days a week. I think the and then we have to add the defense case in there. So I think the prosecution case is going to take another 10 to 12 trial days ish, and then they're going to rest. Then the case is going to turn to the defense. The defense is going to put on, if they can, their own witnesses. They're going to have to make the decision about Donald Trump. They've already told the jury that he may, but may not testify. And so there'll be a defense case. And then there's a rebuttal case by the prosecution. That's why, even though they're moving at a fast clip, this still may time out, given the fact that it's not a full work week during the week. It ends sort of on time at 4:30, which is great for the Midas Touch Legal AF show that you do with Karen. They're not like going, I've been in trials where it starts at 8:30 in the morning and it goes till 6 every day, 5 days a week. We're not doing that here. It's a lighter load that way. Great for the lawyers because they can get prepared for the next day. So this could really play out 6 or 8 weeks, and not additionally, like another 4 to 5 weeks. And then they're not done, the prosecution, conditioning the jury for Michael Cohen's testimony, bolstering it, if you will, reinforcing it. So he becomes, having had every other witness corroborate and evidence having corroborated Michael Cohen does not become the wild card that the defense thinks he's going to be. Or we know he's going to be a human piñata for Donald Trump, whether it's Blanche or, you're right, Emile Bove doing it. Yes, he's going to, put on your hard hat. Michael's going to take some hits in terms of credibility. They'll spend the entire first half of the day talking about Michael's convictions. I don't mean that from a moral standpoint. I mean that from a prison standpoint, and his involvement with all of this. Then they're going to have a hard day. I'm talking about the defense in cross-examination, because Michael is not going to agree with them, and he has the receipts to show that he's right about that he went rogue and that this was his idea out of the selfless bottom of his heart to help out Donald Trump and do a solid. I mean, that's going to be a bad day in that section of the cross-examination. But by the time Michael gets there, between Pecker and Hope Hicks and Keith Davison, who have already testified, these other lawyers that are going to come up there, the people in the Trump organization like Jeff McConney, the controller, ex-controller, and some lower level payment people and all of that, Michael's just going to be like, just tying stuff together and putting a name with a face to people that they've already heard. They will already have a view of Michael Cohen, the jury, before Michael Cohen gets there. And I don't think it's going to be overly negative. Everybody knows that this was sort of a cesspool environment and facts that make everybody a bit squeamish, at least on the jury side. And they're going to have to hold their nose on some of these facts about the payoff of the women and Michael's role in it, along with his boss, Donald Trump, orchestrating it. But by the time Michael gets there, they'll be so properly conditioned and almost normalized about, this is what Conway's saying, about things Michael Cohen, that he will not be the white knuckle moment that people thought it would be for the prosecution. Let's remember that Alvin Bragg wrung his hands for a number of months, almost a year, about whether to do this case because he had to get comfortable with Michael Cohen. That's the reporting. I think Michael Cohen's own reporting is sort of like that. But it's certainly out of the New York Times has reported that Alvin needed to get comfortable with Michael Cohen as a witness, and more importantly, how the case would be presented with all the other corroborating witnesses and evidence to sort of take the sting away from the ultimate cross-examination one day of Michael Cohen. And Alvin Bragg, to his credit, and against tremendous, I mean, he was under so much pressure that few people would have survived it from a career-wise, between his special prosecutor, Mark Pomerantz, coming out and writing a book about, this case should have been brought and why it should have been brought, and commenting about the evidence and commenting about Michael Cohen. And yet Alvin Bragg, talking about prosecutors and quality lawyering on this show, stayed the course, got right with Michael Cohen, but more importantly, got right with his prosecution team and Josh Steinglass and Matt Colangelo about how they were going to insulate Michael before Michael even took the stand. So a long-winded way of saying we're not ready for Michael yet. Michael's coming further down the road, the classic sandwich witness. He's not the first. He's not the last. He's somewhere buried towards the back end. We're probably a week or two away from the back end, and then we'll see Michael Cohen. And look, you and I will spend a considerable amount of time, as will Karen, about the Michael Cohen testimony. But we always have to remember what came before it as building blocks in front of this jury, and as this bell is constantly being rung by this prosecutors in front of this jury.
Popok, two things I want to touch upon briefly. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention how, while all of this is taking place in a Manhattan courtroom with this criminal trial, the Securities and Exchange Commission has officially charged Donald Trump's independent auditor, somebody by the name of B.F. Borgers. Ben Borgers is the head of this company. B.F. Borgers is based in Colorado. They've been charged with massive fraud, basically running an audit mill, signing off on audits for public companies and claiming that they're compliant with the PCAOB standards, which is the kind of public accounting gold standard for public companies, when they're actually not following those standards, and they're just essentially being charged and accused of just signing off with anything that comes before it. And in some cases, even just using either manipulated numbers or like old numbers that come from a predecessor accounting firm. So one of the types of things that they're being accused of is, let's say, a real serious Big Four accounting firm, or a firm in the periphery of the Big Four, a firm that's adjacent to it, says, hey, we don't really feel comfortable being the ones to sign our names on this because, you could be held liable the same way those accountants were held liable in the Enron case. So when you sign these independent audits, you're also subjecting yourself to liability. So if a company or an independent auditor said, we don't want to be a part of this, and they have their last work, one of the things that B.F. Borgers is basically being accused of is just not even doing their own work, just like taking the spreadsheets that they got and just signing off on it without really doing any significant diligence. We previously reported here, both based on our independent reporting as well as from the reporting by the Financial Times a few weeks back, that this B.F. Borgers had got a 100% delinquency rate. Like, it failed 21 of 21 audits by the PCAOB when 21 files were audited, 100% defective. I mean, that's like pretty impressively defective, that every single file had an issue. There were local issues. There were bans of B.F. Borgers in Canada, and Trump's prior accounting firms quit, and they didn't feel comfortable working for Trump Media. And remember, Popok, what I think needs to be talked about here is the critical time that this B.F. Borgers stepped in for Trump Media, and who's Trump Media going to use now that it doesn't even have the audit mill people to sign off on it. And then it raises the broader issue of, this is who Trump surrounds himself with, people like Borgers and B.F. Borgers versus like real accounting firms, that you would normally expect to see in situations like this. It was one of the first things I looked at when this merger was announced back in, I think it was late March. I was like, who's the auditor? B.F. Borgers. I'm like, who the heck is B.F. Borgers? And I looked at their office. I saw this office that looked like a rest stop bathroom. And I saw Ben Borgers, and I'm like, this doesn't seem, I don't know much about Borgers. I've never heard of this guy before, but this doesn't seem legit to me. And I raised the red flag right away. look at this guy, look at this guy, look at this. It was the first thing I said. And if you all watch, you remember I said that. I looked at The Office. I was like, what publicly traded, supported billion-dollar company is being audited by something like this? It's not to say he may have been a good auditor. I don't know. It just raised a ton of red flags and made me like instantly suspicious. But the SEC charged him. He's agreed to like a $14 million settlement and a suspension from ever appearing before the SEC again. But I think that that's just it's a data point, Popok, of like, really, and like, it's not a witch hunt. It's not a this. It's just really messed up people who this guy surrounds himself with. And I just want competence. I just want normal people. I want skilled people. I want professionals. And that's what we talk about here a lot. Professionals, normalcy.
The MAGA may want diapers over Dems, or whatever it's called right now, to try to turn back the reporting about his gastrointestinal problems during trial. But we want, as you said, we want and demand competency. And the Borgers thing is just a long line and a series of professionals putting too kind of spin on it. People that you're supposed to hire as independents in order to protect the investing community, as a requirement of you to have a corporate license to operate in a certain state. And so is anybody shocked on our side that Donald Trump, having been fired by his company being fired by his longtime outside auditors, Mazars, who eventually became witness for the prosecution or witness for the attorney general in the civil fraud case, not only quit him after 10 years, but issued a statement that we reported on 2 years ago that became critical to the case against Donald Trump for civil fraud, which a judge has already found him to have committed with his family civil fraud in a crime spree that lasted over 10 years in his companies. Anybody surprised that when they quit, they also said, and by the way, everything that we've told the outside world and counterparties about reliability of our financial statements that we certified is false. You can't rely on them because we can't rely on the client, which is Donald Trump. So that's Mazars. Then when Donald Trump decided to use this SPAC to go public, the Special Purpose Acquisition Company, to go public, he, as you said, Ben, he had another auditor that was a decent auditor in all this, Withum, Smith, and Brown, which people in that sort of SPAC world knew. But after several months, Withum, Smith, and Brown said, you're fired, to paraphrase The Apprentice. We don't want to be a part of Trump world, even before they went, quote unquote, public. And then Donald Trump had a scramble. And who does he find? Ben Borgers, who you just found. Now, I was involved years ago in suing a auditing firm for a client in Florida, a public client, not publicly traded, but a public client, a government client down in Florida, and almost eerily the same kind of allegations that they were a mill that was churning audits and had missed key things in our clients' books and records, that if the board had known about it, they would have made some other decisions, and instead they lost millions of dollars. So that's what we were suing the auditor for. And that's what the SEC has claimed, that Borgers, that's why there's a 100% fail rate, because they were cutting and pasting, and they were churning audits, not doing the actual work. I can't even believe, based on that rest stop photo of their office, there's enough people to do an audit that's required. Now, that would explain why I saw some weird, you're talking about red flags. I saw some weird reporting about a week or two ago that said that there were 13 spelling errors of the Trump name or Trump organization in the Borgers work papers or filings. I was like, well, how do you get the name of the client wrong? Right, because you're cutting and pasting from something else because you're not doing the work. You're just doing you're just making documents. You're making audit files without really doing the audit work. But even that, Ben, talk about, you're doing bad and fraudulent things when you're Donald Trump, when even your phony auditor made a disclosure a month ago that said this company, Trump Media, is on the verge and teetering on bankruptcy. When even that company that you're paying to not really do an audit had to reveal that before they were caught by the SEC in other fraud. But what you don't have, and that's a very good point you made, Ben, to reinforce, you and I from our careers have worked with and will work with in all of the professional worlds that are adjacent to the law: auditing, accounting, forensic examination, and other things like other outside lawyers. When I was an inside lawyer, hiring outside lawyers, we worked with people that were either top 5 in their practice areas or top 5 firms as recognized by every credible list, or on the American Lawyer, which ranks the top 200 or 500 law firms, somewhere in the top 10, 20, or 30 of those lists. And then, or in Best Lawyers or Chambers, all these other rating and review agencies that are out there that exist. And those are the people that we work with. I could never, as the deputy general counsel and head of litigation globally for a Wall Street firm, financial services firm, I could never bring in a Borgers to be the auditor. My boss and the owner of the company would say, "I'm sorry, excuse me, who? What is this?" Because you need to be able to look a board, a public, a regulator in the eye with a straight face and say, these are the people that are protecting the people's money, that are protecting and making sure that the playing field is level and that they're independent. And especially when you have regulators. And you and I talked about this.
Yep.
Even though it's making potentially Donald Trump billions of dollars on paper, him going public and being subject to the Securities and Exchange Commission, especially one where he doesn't get to appoint the head of it because he gets elected again, may be his worst nightmare and lead to his financial ruin. Because the Securities and Exchange Commission, led by proper people like we have right now under Gary Gensler and others, led by Joe Biden, they don't play. And they will bring down Donald Trump and this organization, even though they let them go public after there was an earlier fraud scandal and it delayed them for a year. But this is the only way Donald Trump can get the massive amounts of money that he wants. Private investment was not going to do it. He was not going to get professional investors, even if he went to Dubai or Saudi Arabia, to give him the billions of dollars that he can get from a gullible public that is pumping up this stock for him because they believe in, diapers over Democrats. So he had to go, but that is a dangerous and treacherous route for him because of the Department of Justice Civil Division and the Securities and Exchange Commission. And I think so you like talking about red flags, I agree. This is maybe the first shoe to drop, is this fraudulent auditor. The crosshairs are on there. And I'll just speak to you from one last thing about my career in representing financial services companies. When the SEC or another federal regulator gets it in their head that a company that they are regulating or auditing is a bad company culturally, they are on them. The crosshairs almost never come off, and they will bring that company eventually down. And that's what I believe is. I think everyone on the regulator side believes that all Trump entities are a bad companies and bad culture. And they will not relent. Talk about it. It's not a witch hunt. It's just regulatory focused when they think a company is bad and it's public facing.
Which is one of the reasons that Trump and others in MAGA want to remove all regulatory frameworks to allow the kind of deterioration of markets working efficiently, and then they gaslight and claim it's in the interest of free markets when actually you have this manipulation taking place. And I think it's appropriate to kind of conclude with this. Donald Trump's judgment, or I should say lack of judgment or dangerous decision making, made him say, you know who I'm going to take as this independent auditor, or after no one else wanted to work with him because of the conduct he was engaged in? B.F. Borgers, an audit mill. Now, the same person who says, I want B.F. Borgers, was the person who made life or death decisions when COVID hit our shores. I want you to think about that. This is the person who made life or death decisions while he was in office. And that is why there was so many issues, so many systemic problems. And when President Biden came into office, he had to deal with failed trade wars by Donald Trump, Trump's excessive borrowing, which is the cause of inflation when you borrow and print money as recklessly and carelessly as Donald Trump did. I know the right wing wants to talk about debt and all of these things. Well, Donald Trump added $8 trillion of debt. More than 25% of all debt is by this person. And you just have to take a look at the SPAC. This is how he's run everything his entire life. I mean, look, even the disclosure form that he filed when the SPAC went public and it had the reverse merger, the SEC requires you to disclose your bankruptcies. This is not a political thing. This is not, you're a lefty, you're calling this out. No, I'm just letting you know this is Donald Trump's own filing. A number of companies that were associated with President Trump, that's how he refers to himself, that's how you know it's him, have filed for bankruptcy. There can be no assurances that Trump Media will not also become bankrupt. Entities associated with Trump have filed for bankruptcy protection. The Trump Taj Mahal, which was built and owned by Trump, filed for Chapter 11 in 1991. The Trump Plaza, the Trump Castle, the Plaza Hotel, all owned by Trump at the time, also filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 1992. THCR, which was founded by Trump in 1995, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2004. Trump Entertainment Resorts, the new name given to Trump hotels and casinos, after its 2004 bankruptcy, declared bankruptcy in 2009. Then they list others. A number of companies that had license agreements with Trump failed, and there can be no assurance that TMTG will also not fail. Trump Shuttle, launched by Trump in 1989, defaulted on its loans in 1990 and ceased to exist by 1992. Trump University, founded in 2005, ceased operations in 2011 amidst lawsuits and investigations. Trump Vodka, a brand of vodka, was introduced in 2005, discontinued in 2011. Trump Mortgages, a financial services company founded by Trump in 2006, ceased in 2007. GoTrump.com, a travel site founded in 2006, out of business in 2007. Trump Steaks, founded in 2007, discontinued sales 2 months later. That's Trump's own disclosure right there. And then you look at how you got BF Borgers. And as you mentioned, Popok, Mazars resigned. Markham, another accounting firm, resigned. Witham Smith Brown resigned. Resign. Then you look at Trump in office. He's not being supported by his former vice president. He's not being supported by his former defense secretary. He's not being supported by his former national security advisor. Think about it. These are interrelated concepts. And one of the points where we're at the intersection of law and politics that we always talk about is this is not, y'all are coming from it from the left, or this is a liberal person. It's really not, there's nothing left or liberal about any of this. These are just the facts, and we need to live in an objective reality where we can look at this conduct and call out fraud, call out lies, call out failure. And that's what we need to do. It is people who want to politicize objective reporting. That's the politicization in order to try to hoist up this loser, this failure, this fraud that is Donald Trump. And that's not hyperbolic. It's just take a look at the filings. It's failure, it's fraud, and it's just continuing to lose over and over again. On that note, let me say, Michael Popok, thank you for everything that you do. Your breaking news updates are incredible. Professor Popok on patreon.com/legalaf, patreon.com/legalaf. There is exclusive lectures. If you really want to geek out on the law, see the type of lectures that I would give to my law students and undergrad students that Professor Popok would give as well. It also helps build this network. People are really enjoying it. I think we have almost 3,000 patrons already. Let's try to get that to 10,000. It's patreon.com/legalaf. One more time, patreon.com/legalaf. We'll keep everybody updated as we go throughout the week on everything relating to this Trump criminal trial. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 3 million subscribers together, and make sure you subscribe to Legal AF on audio podcasts as well. Thank you all so much. Popok, Always a pleasure. People go, call him Michael Popak, but we both call each other by our last name sometimes. Popak's not offended when I call him by his last name.
All my best friends have always called me Popak, and my wife sometimes called me Popak, and she is a Popak.
You see, that's an evidentiary admission right there. See you next time on Legal AF. Have a great one. Shout out to the Midas Mighty.